Hello, and welcome to another video, another reading wrap-up, this time for October. And I read a lot of books in October, so let's get started. Why don't we start, okay, actually, let me tell you how many there are. 10. Damn. I really went crazy. Like, not for any real reason. A bunch of them were short. That's the secret. Okay, so let's start with the ones that I read just a little bit each day in the morning when I take my pills. And the first one was What If 2 by Randall Munroe. So I read the first What If book because I own it, and I knew there was a second one, so I got that one out of the library. It was fun. It was fun. Like, honestly, I mostly read it in September, but I finished it in October, so I gotta talk about it now. But it was just as fun as the first one. Lots of little illustrations, lots of kind of goofy science questions, you know. He had sections where he did very short answers as well, so that was a little bit different. But yeah, like I just think they're fun books. If you want to see somebody do some math and figure out the answer to some like truly bonkers questions. And then, yeah, I mean, like, I don't remember a lot of the specifics at this point, but I think they're fun books. There isn't a third one, but maybe there will be. I don't know. I then read this book, Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World, written and illustrated by Rachel Ignatowski, which I actually have read before because I own it, and I read it several years ago, closer to when I got it as a gift. But basically just it goes through a whole bunch of women scientists in history, and she has like a page of, say, like 4 or 5 paragraphs about them, and then this like lovely illustration and a bunch of other like little illustrations around them. Here's Rosalind Franklin. Where is she? I'll find her. Barbara McClintock. I've always liked Barbara McClintock because she did corn genetics. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely written for, I think, a slightly younger age. Just because of like how, you know, how the writing is, but it's interesting and it's cool. Like, I've read the book before, but of course I don't remember all the details, so I kind of didn't remember everybody in here. A lot of these are women that I've heard of from other contexts and also like from school in a few cases. But then there are a lot of them I had forgotten about, and it was nice to be reminded. Also, there's a lot of variety of science in here, which is nice. And it's colorful, and the illustrations are darling. And she's got a couple more books like this, but I think they're about athletes and artists, which are 2 groups of people I'm equally not interested in, but I still plan on reading those probably if I can get them easily. So that'll be fun. Okay, then let's see. Let's talk about audiobooks. Okay, so I had 2 audiobooks again that I finished in October. First off, The Demon of Unrest by Erik Larson, which was another thing that I mostly read in September. It was great. It was great. I love Erik Larson's books. I have liked every single one of them, and this one I actually was able to listen to, like, even though it came out this year, so I got on it pretty quick. Which, I mean, on the one hand, that's great. On the other hand, it makes me sad because that just means, like, the longer I have to wait for him to publish another book. Like, okay, I gotta give him time to actually work on that. I can't start looking too soon as to whether he's got another one coming out. But yeah, Erik Larson does nonfiction. He wrote The Devil in the White City, but he also wrote like 10 other books. Maybe not quite 10, but I have read all of them. I think there's like 1 that I haven't read, which is quite an old one. But I think the oldest of his that I've read was Isaac's Storm, which is about Galveston hurricane in it's either 01 or 03, I don't remember. Anyway, that's not the point. Demons of Unrest. no, demon. Yeah, it's not plural, it's singular. The Demon of Unrest is about the very, very beginning of the Civil War. So it's basically about the time period from Lincoln's presidential election through to like when the war really started. And so there's several months there, you know, where Lincoln has not been inaugurated yet, and there's tensions happening. There's all of these different delegations are kind of coming together in different southern states, deciding whether they're going to secede. And there's tensions at Fort Sumter around that. Honestly don't know why Fort Sumter specifically, because there were certainly other forts. There must be, right? There must have been. I know there were other forts within, you know, the southern United States. So why Fort Sumter specifically became kind of this place where things came to a head, I don't know. But there's a lot about it in the book, and you know, like with all of Eric Larson's books, it's a lot of like quotes from diaries and letters, and it was really good. That was really interesting. And I love the way he writes. Okay, I love the way he writes. Whatever he writes about, I find engaging and easy to like understand and listen to. And then I followed that up with another nonfiction audiobook, A Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan, which I have not read anything by him before, but I thought this was great. And it's honestly like a real appropriate follow-up to The Demon of Unrest. Sorry. Because it's about the KKK in Indiana in the 1920s. So, I mean, there's kind of an obvious through line there, like, and it focuses on this guy who kind of built up the Midwest and especially the Indiana clan, D.C. Stevens, and he was a real freak, all sorts of ways. I mean, obviously, if you're going to be in leadership of the clan, then you're a freak definitionally. But then additionally, he was like a con man. It wasn't his real name. He lied about his whole past, just all this stuff. And he also mistreated women really badly. And finally, it came to a head where he was in the position where he mistreated this one woman so much that she took poison and then spent like a month dying. And so it was on her behalf that he was sued, or that he was like, not sued, that he was indicted, you know, for murder, which I mean, I thought was a little bit of a stretch personally, because I'm like, okay, but he didn't kill her, she killed herself. But he did still end up in prison, so yay, which is kind of a spoiler, I guess. But that's a lot what this book is about. Is about just chronicling kind of like this trial. But before we get to that point, you know, talking about the people involved and about, you know, how just sort of universally terrible people were in that time in the 20s, joining the Klan, how much power it had, but also how this particular case really like knocked it down a few pegs, which was nice to hear. Also, I appreciated the time that was devoted to talking about people who fought against the Klan. There are several journalists in Indiana who wrote about, you know, how much the Klan sucked ass, basically, and made fun of them. And like, these guys did not have an easy time of it, but they still did it because they were like, fuck you guys, which is completely legit. Also some stuff about the history of the Klan, like, because in the 20s it was essentially revived. The original Klan popped up right after the Civil War, and then basically President Grant sent a bunch of soldiers and was like, stop fucking, knock it off, which I think is incredibly based. Is that what the kids say? I don't know. I think that's great of him. That was a good move. But the presidents in the teens and 20s were not interested in doing that because they sucked. So the Klan exploded, but it was sort of this new incarnation of the Klan. And not only did they hate black people, of course, they also hated equally Jewish people, Catholics, immigrants, basically anybody who wasn't like 100% like Anglo-Saxon American stock, you know. So I don't know, like, you didn't have to step very far outside of their sort of perfect conceptualization as the Native American to like be somebody that they hated. So yeah, so they sucked, and I hope they're all dead. They're probably not. But anybody who was in the Klan in the 20s is probably dead, because that was 100 years ago. So we can at least appreciate that, I guess. But anyway, that was a great book. Okay, now let's talk. Well, I had a couple of sci-fi books. Let's talk about those. First off, The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. So I have not read a Vonnegut in like years, like in a really long time. And I've read 4 of his books, and I'm like, man, that is not a lot. So previously, obviously, I'd only read 3 of his books, and I'm like, I need to read another Vonnegut book. So anyway, I decided to go with Sirens of Titan because I saw a version of it that has the Taj Mahal just sort of floating in space on the cover, and I was like, what is that? The book itself is insane. Like, I don't know how to explain this book. Like, genuinely, it's about this guy who, oh my god, if you've read this book, then you're probably like, yeah, I don't know, that's fair. Like, how the fuck do you describe Sirens of Titan? Okay, so there's this guy who, he's sort of time traveling, but not really. He's existing at every point along a particular sort of arc of space and time. So he's aware of things that will happen in the future. And he starts doing all this crazy shit on Mars. And also it's all this stuff about his wife and this random guy who's the richest man on Earth named Malachi Constant. And then like what happens to them. And there's some stuff in there that's like real messed up. And just kind of almost this idea of like the meaning of life, but in a really roundabout and fucked way. Some stuff about being a soldier, because at one point Constant is a soldier on Mars, and they all have like chips in their brains that force them to do things and follow orders, and he keeps getting his memories erased. Like, he'll break a rule a little too hard, and then they'll take him to the hospital and like erase his memory. And so there's this whole thread in that part of from that part kind of on to the end of the book, where he knows that he has this great best friend, and he hopes he can go find this guy, and then they can kind of go off. And then he's eventually told toward the end of the book that he actually killed him, and that was something that he did not know because he didn't recognize him when they told him, like, kill this guy. So it's fucked up. Yeah, it was wild. And for the record, the Taj Mahal bit was that this guy, the sort of time traveling man, built an exact replica of it on Titan for some reason. Also there was this alien who was supposed to be carrying this message entirely across the galaxy, and it was gonna take like millions of years to do it, but he lives forever. And then also he was like just a weird little robot made of junk. It was a weird fucking book. I don't know how to talk about it. Like, it was strange, and I appreciated the strangeness. I didn't love the book though, but I guess I'm glad I read it. I need to read more Vonnegut. And I'll find a book of his that hits the weird in just the right way so that I really do appreciate it. I don't know, someday. The other sci-fi book was also fine. And that was System Collapse by Martha Wells, which is the newest book of the Murderbot series. So I like Murderbot, but there's always something about the books in this series that is just this disconnect for me. I like the character of Murderbot. I am happiest when it is going through some sort of emotional turmoil, having breakdowns, and like that's in this book, so that's great. But it always takes me a while to get into the world, to figure out the plot, I usually don't care that much about the plot either, which I think is too bad. Like, the books just, for me, just continue to miss something, which sucks. So, I don't know. I mean, but whatever, like, I'm gonna keep reading them. If there's gonna be any more, I don't know. So yeah, that was my sci-fi. Not super great. All right, let's just talk about the rest of the stuff I read this month. Just a few more books. The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Emma Orczy. Okay, so this one is like kind of random, but I wanted to read another classic. I wanted it to be short. I wanted it to be by a woman. That, you know, kind of decreases the number of possibilities, especially the short, because classics, a lot of them are real long. But anyway, I was like, the Scarlet Pimpernel. So first of all, it's not as old as I thought it was. It's from 1905, which, like, isn't that old, really. But weird little book. I had a good time, even if the writing was like insanely florid. But basically you are following this woman, Marguerite. Well, I don't remember the rest of her name. Marguerite. And she is, well, she's being blackmailed. So she gets blackmailed by this French cop, basically, Chauvelin. He, you know, they know each other, and he has basically is like, well, I've captured your brother. I know that he's part of this group of the Scarlet Pimpernel's group of people who are helping aristocrats get out of Paris and get out of France so that they can't get guillotined, because this is set during the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror, you know. And he's like, you are going to help me figure out who the Scarlet Pimpernel is, or I will, you know, let your brother get guillotined. Otherwise, I will, you know, like, let him escape to England. And so she's like, oh shit. So, I mean, she's French, obviously, to make that clear. So I don't know who would read the Scarlet Pimpernel without knowing the twist, like without knowing who the Scarlet Pimpernel is, because that's how I went into it. I figured like nobody else is ever going to pick this book up at this point in history without being familiar with the idea that, spoilers, Percy Blakeney, Marguerite's husband, is the Scarlet Pimpernel, but she didn't know it. But I think the fact that she is the perspective character is interesting. Like, obviously, I guess then you get to have the twist, because otherwise it's like, it would be stupid to be like, who is that damned elusive Pimpernel, when you fucking know the whole time. You don't find it out until she figures it out partway through. Of course, I've seen the movie. There's probably multiple movies, but I've seen the one where Chauvelin is played by Ian McKellen. I was gonna say Alec Guinness. I'm like, that is not right. Ian McKellen. Which I honestly don't know how old that one is. It's probably kind of oldish. But I've seen that movie. I know who the Scarlet Pimpernel is. This is not a surprise to me, but I generally enjoyed the book. Like, I think that just the over-the-top writing style was just kind of irritating to read. Also, some anti-Semitism, which, not great, not fun. I think you could argue that at least some of it is kind of coming from the villain, or taking advantage of the villain, but like, it's just like, why? Why are we writing about some Jewish guy this way? But like, besides that, it's a romp. It's a romp. It's very silly. It's very overblown. There's a lot of Marguerite just being like, oh, whoa, you know, and just like her relationship with Percy is interesting because they got married, and then like 2 days later, he found out that something she had said had led to this Aristo getting guillotined. And it was sort of a mistake on her part. She didn't really realize it would go that far. But still, she confesses this to him, and it kind of ruins their relationship. And that was like a year or two before the book is set. So yeah, so the relationship angle is interesting, and not something I was necessarily expecting to be interesting, I guess. So the Scarlet Pimpernel. There's also like 7 other books in the series. I am not going to read them. Okay. Then we can talk about The Bruising of Qilwa by Nassim Jamia. So this is a little tiny fantasy novella about a character who, well, okay, so I heard about the book because the character is asexual. And I thought, well, you know, this plot sounds at least mildly interesting, and I did not realize that it was going to be like incredibly short, but, you know, like, because I'm just not I don't mind short books, but when it comes to fantasy especially, I think they just work better if they've got more time to expand the world building. And I did feel like world building was kind of a little bit of a weakness in this, like, because it's just like partially just for me, because I want to know stuff and I want to understand, and like there there was the city, and then there were refugees, and then there were people from this area, and like 4 different ethnicities, and I was just struggling to really figure out like what the deal was, what the history was, that I do think you kind of needed to know to understand the interactions between the characters. But the actual plot was good. The main character is a kind of a healer with some magical abilities. They've come to the city as a refugee with their family. And the thing is, though, that they're keeping secret is that they have further magical healing abilities in the form of like blood magic, but they're keeping the blood magic a secret because it's technically like it freaks people out. And it's like people who do blood magic are are part of that ethnicity are being specifically targeted. Also, there was some weird shit about how there was a giant bird in their homeland attacking it, and I was like, what the fuck? What? It was very weird. I was like, okay. I don't know. And like, you know, but the writing was good. The writing was good generally. And kind of the revelation of what was happening, right? So basically, sorry, I stopped halfway through telling you what the plot is. So they start working as a healer in the city that they've moved to. And they start discovering that there's some sort of a disease that they realize eventually, seems to have a connection in blood magic, and they're like, oh shit. And yeah, so basically it kind of evolves from there. Another issue I think the book has is that it's set over the course of basically 2 years. The very end of the book is year 3. It's kind of a epilogue. And I was like, Jesus God, like just so much, it's a lot of time to have passed in a book that's under 200 pages long. I get why that time needs to pass, but it genuinely just feels like this was a very good idea that, for me personally, would have worked better if it was several hundred pages longer. Because there would have been more time for all of that, and for character and relationship development, and for world building, and you could have had a subplot or 2 in there. Like, I don't know. It wasn't enough for me, but you know what? It was not bad. I don't know if the author has written anything else, but I would not be averse to reading anything else by them. Perhaps especially if it were longer. Just an idea. Yeah, so that was okay. All right. Honestly, I feel like I gave it a decent rating largely because I thought the ideas were really good, you know? Okay, so let's talk about the last book. The last book I have left to talk about, which is something that I bought, My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyen Khan Braithwaite. Listen, this book was really fun. Wait, no, I skipped something. I'm sorry. This is the second to last, penultimate. Oh my God, there's so many books this month. Okay, penultimate book, My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyen Khan Braithwaite. This kind of fucked. As you can see, again, it's quite short, but I think that a short thriller, that's a good length for a thriller, right? Those can be short. So, My Sister the Serial Killer, it's about this woman who lives in Nigeria, and her sister, believe it or not, is a serial killer. And like, you're following her as she, I mean, like when the story starts, she's helping her sister hide the body of this man that she has just stabbed. And she's beginning to realize this is the 3rd time that this has happened. And I'm starting to think it might not be that she's dating shitty guys who she needs to defend herself from. I'm starting to think it might be her fault. And then, main character, Korede. Korede's boss, who is a doctor, she's a nurse, she has a big old crush on, he meets Ayula, the sister, and asks for her number, and they start dating, and Korede's like, oh fuck, oh shit. And yeah, so it's interesting, like she has to choose between her sister and this guy, or any given guy, really, that her sister might target at some point. And it's interesting, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, now, final book, which I also really enjoyed. So I would say My Sister the Serial Killer and then this next one were my favorites. And that's What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. So this was just kind of me trying to get a little like spooky, okay? Like it's October, let's get a little spooky. and I've heard a lot of people talk about What Moves the Dead. So it's a retelling of the Edgar Allan Poe story, The Fall of the House of Usher, which I have never read. I should read more Poe, but like today is not that day. There's mushrooms. There's this like nasty, it's like very gothic. There's this like nasty ass house. It's set in some fake European country and is about this. Also, there's this interesting thing about gender in there where the main character who's telling the story is a soldier from some fake European country who basically if you join the army, you get a special soldier gender, and that's your gender. So that was interesting. I like genuinely don't remember what pronouns they used though. It wasn't they. I just don't remember what it was. But there was this whole paragraph where they were talking about the different pronouns that are used in their language, like children, specific one for children, for example. So it's like children, soldiers, and like some other men and women, of course, but then some other stuff. So anyway, that was interesting. Not really the point though. The main reason I thought this was so great was because the creepiness factor. I don't read a ton of horror, but I'm kind of dipping my toes in over the last couple of years, and I feel like I don't tend to find it scary. It's more that I'll more likely find it gross or disturbing. But actually scary, like actually creeping me the fuck out, that does not really happen much. Like I don't find axe murderers or vampires or whatever creepy, if that makes sense. But I found this book to be very creepy because it involved, you know, there were some rabbits that weren't moving right. And that, I don't know what that is. Like there's something about animals acting wrong that triggers the like real like creep factor in my mind. I'm like, okay, that's scary. I think maybe that I just kind of, you know, because like you read about animals who have rabies or something, right? And they start acting fucked up. And I think maybe that's part of what makes something like that scary, is it just the thought of like, if this animal's not acting right, like there is something wrong with it, you know, and that wrong thing could cause it to attack me or could spread to me. So yeah, there's some rabbits that are not acting right in this book. And also there's a bunch of stuff about like mushrooms, fungi, which is just more gross. But I really enjoyed it. Like, yeah, no, I thought it was great. I definitely want to read more T. Kingfisher because I was like, wow, what else do you have? Like, I've heard of a number of other books by them, so, or by her. So hopefully I will get around to reading those. Also, I actually don't know what else Oyin Khan Braithwaite may have written. This feels like maybe her first book. Looks like she has done gotten prizes for poetry and short stories, which are just things I don't tend to read. But you know, I don't know what else she wrote. Anyway, whatever. I gotta look her up. I do, because that book like was great. So anyway, I feel like it was a largely successful month. I read a lot. Some of it was very good. All of it was at least decent. And I'll be back here in a month to tell you how November goes. So I hope you guys read at least one creepy book in October, and you know, so I'll see you when I see you.